You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Digging deeper now into some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Representative Candace Perucci and former Utah Democratic Party Chair Jeff Merchant. Great to have both of you back on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We had an important conversation on family policy earlier in the show. I want to dig into it more with you to get your take, both of you, on this. First off, Representative, let's start with you. This is something I'm sure you talk about a lot with constituents as you meet with them. What are current conditions you are seeing when it comes to family policy in the state of Utah?
I mean, if you look at this report that they put out, Utah is #1 for our economy. Yet again, we're #1 for social upward mobility. We have the highest number of families across the country. And so I think what's really important and something we're focusing on at the legislature is how do you help maintain that secret sauce through conservative policies, but also policies that keep government out of the way of individual families from succeeding and making it an affordable place to live for young families. So how do we address property taxes? How do we address income and the sales tax? How do we drive down income tax that people can keep more of their hard-earned money? How do you have policies that encourage and incentivize small businesses to flourish? Those are the things we're looking at to make sure that we maintain our ability to be a great place for young families to grow and build a life together.
Jeff, let's bring you in from the Democratic perspective. How are you seeing family policy play out in the state of Utah?
Look, there are a lot of aspects of policy in the state of Utah that have worked really well for families. I think that the big problem that we have is massive challenges with getting young families into homes, massive problems with young families being able to earn a type of income to afford not just a home, but health care and child care, all sorts of things that, frankly, the legislature has decided to ignore over the last several years. Frankly, over the last 35 years, we haven't been talking about a lot of different elements of helping families to be able to manage what has become an extremely expensive place to live. And it doesn't matter if you're in Salt Lake County, if you're in Utah County, if you're in Davis County, even now in some of the areas that we consider more rural, it's very expensive to live in this state. And a lot of people are choosing not to have families specifically because they can't afford it.
Representative, that was one of the interesting things that stood out to me in that study is that younger Utahns are starting to push those decisions off marriage and childbearing due in large part to the fact they can't afford it. Your thoughts on that?
Well, and I would just say that we have done a lot of things to begin addressing these issues and have historically. We, in this last session, looked at expanding the child tax credit, particularly for young families who are looking for child care options, right, that those parents will be able to decide if they're going to be able to keep that money or direct it to child care. We also lowered the income tax again so people can keep more of their hard-earned money. We've done a lot to try and encourage education and workforce alignment for individuals. So obviously, we need to do this. We're also operating under a national network where we have record high inflation, thanks to President Biden's administration. A lot of policies gone wrong. So there are things that we can do at the state level to try and offset and provide tax relief and getting people those opportunities. So absolutely, we've been looking at housing for several years and how do we drive affordable housing. We just actually passed a bill last session for first-time home buyers to make it easier for them that they could get a loan for their down payment so that they can buy a house and start investing in themselves. So we are working on those things, and we are especially looking at how do we make it to where families growing up in rural Utah are able to stay there and continue to contribute to that local economy and growth. So I'm excited about these opportunities we have moving forward. As a millennial and someone who buys groceries every week, I absolutely understand the challenges of trying to pay for gas and groceries and pay your mortgage. And that's why I think it's so important we have conservative policies empowering families up at the legislature.
Okay,
Glenn,
Jeff,
I just say, Glenn, that I wish that maybe instead of this year, the legislature would have been dealing with this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They've had a Republican trifecta since the 1980s, and all of a sudden now they think that it's a problem. I think that there's a real challenge to argue that a lot of great things have been going on when over the last several years we've had lots and lots of problems. And to blame Joe Biden as the exclusive reason for all of that, frankly, is just silly. I mean, you can go ahead and pass all the income tax cuts that you want, but when people get $15 back as a result of that tax cut, it doesn't do anything. You need to do, if you want to do a tax cut, give people a whole lot more money, or just keep the money and use it for social services to help people so that they can get the things that they actually need and can't afford otherwise.
All right, I was going to move move on, but Representative, I see on your face you want to respond to that. So
obviously, to not acknowledge a 16% increase in groceries and to not acknowledge the massive increase in gas prices would be tone deaf. To say that, oh, we operate in our own bubble here in Utah. So I think but we're operating under a federal system is what I'm saying within that. But I think we've done this for far beyond the past few years. Utah's been focusing on housing and infrastructure and transportation and making sure we're preparing for the rapid growth that we're experiencing now. And so we've continued to do that. We have done so historically. I also think we have seen a mass exodus from other states where we have seen an increase in immigration into our state because of our business-friendly practices. And so we're going to continue to be working on ways to increase affordability and accessibility for Utah families.
Okay, let's move on to the race for the White House, kind of sticking on what we were just talking about. Jeff, we'll start with you on this one. Ron DeSantis, Republican hopeful in the state of Utah during the week. But as you take a look and assess what's playing out on the Republican side versus, strident support for President Biden on the Democratic side, how are you seeing this play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we're seeing what we have seen in the Republican Party for the last several election cycles, which is this far-right kind of, just ultra conservative part of the party fighting against more normal parts of the party. And the interesting thing is that the moderate, or frankly what I would call normal Republican Party, these candidates aren't getting any say at all. We're looking at Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, and it's odd to me that the Republican Party would choose, frankly, two big bullies to operate as their primary candidates. Now, having said that, I also think that Ron DeSantis is rather boring. I think that people are seeing that, and I think that that's the reason why he's not making any real progress in the polls. I think that we're going to probably see an indicted Donald Trump end up being the Republican nominee, and I think that that's sad for the entirety of the Republican Party, not just the ultra-conservatives.
Representative, you endorse Ron DeSantis on the Republican side. Talk about that and how you see this race playing out.
Well, notice that my counterpart doesn't speak at all about their nominee, which will be President Biden. There must not be a lot to talk about there. But I will say I'm excited to see all the Republican candidates that have jumped in the race. We have a deep bench of phenomenal Republican leaders who are diverse across our country. I think Ron DeSantis has the best chance of uniting our party right now. He has a proven record through COVID, especially on pushing back on government regulation and limiting individual freedom. And I think he appeals to a broad spectrum of individuals. There's an entire group of moms across the country uniting behind him. So I think he would do a great job. If you look at his second quarter disclosures, he's done a phenomenal job fundraising as well and is going to continue to do so. So I'm excited about it. I think we need a fresh perspective for the Republican Party and someone who's going to get back to the basics of our party platform and focus on limiting government spending, and empowering individuals and families.
Jeff, make the case for President Biden for another term.
Sure. I mean, look, Ron DeSantis wasn't fighting against Biden policies. He's been fighting against Donald Trump policies. I mean, that's how he made his name on all the COVID stuff, was what was going on with Donald Trump. Joe Biden has seen the largest increases in economic development in this country. He's invested in infrastructure to a largest extent that we've seen probably ever. Joe Biden has done a whole lot of stuff, and the Republicans have been so hell-bent on making sure that people think that he's some bad individual that nobody's taken a look at all of the amazing things that he has done. Now, we're talking about a man who has been in public service for a very long time and has done a lot of interesting things, and now as president has reinvested a lot of the wealth that this country has to benefit people on a day-to-day basis. And I think at the end of the day, that is more important than fighting against Walt Disney Company, fighting against wokeness and all of this stuff. He's getting stuff done. He's not playing the culture war game.
Okay, we have about 30 seconds left. Representative, you will have the final word here. Respond to the case that Jeff just made for the president, but also talk a little bit about how plurality could end up playing out in this race on the Republican side, and do some of those Republicans need to come together and say, for the good of this, we need to get out?
I think definitely you'll see as the race tightens up that you'll see people coming out and endorsing candidates, obviously, and throwing the support behind it. And largely people have been congenial working with other campaigns and whatnot. But I will say this, there's a lot going on within the Democratic Party. When you're talking about President Biden, you've got Bobby Kennedy, who is posting videos of himself doing push-ups and doing flips off the back of a boat, highlighting his healthiness and age and vibrancy and vitality as a candidate. And there are young Democrats who are looking at that saying, maybe that's more of a candidate I'd like to see. I'll say from a Republican perspective, most families want someone whose common sense approach is going to be the best for the economy and keep government out of their lives. And that's where I see Ron DeSantis being the best pick for Republicans moving forward.
Okay, we're going to have to end it on that note. Very lively discussion from the two of you this morning. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Glenn.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.